strong enough to break these chains we in that keep us in this painful condition. She give us truth and division. That's why we listen. She break it down, 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 down.
Welcome back. You are listening to Lurie Daniel Favors on Sirius XM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. Are we live on YouTube, Amina? For real? Because I don't see it on my notifications. You have it? All right, but is it showing me or is it the little square situation? You know, it's the first of the year, so people be changing our things and our setups. Okay, so we're good. Hi, YouTube. Hi. Welcome back. It feels really good to be with you all. But you are being invited into the Urban View experience here on Sirius XM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. Those of you who noticed the new song we got for the intro, yes, that is the Lurie Breaks It Down intro. If you have been listening to the podcast and you actually pay attention to the intro, because I know sometimes when I'm on a podcast, I often skip the intro. I do. I don't know if anybody else does that, but I often skip the intro. But if you don't skip the intro, that song was very familiar to you. That song was produced by my child. Shout out to Nas, and sung by my husband. Shout out to Brian, because they both said, Lurie breaks it down. We could do something with that. And they did. So shout out to them. Appreciate it. But we got so much to get to. It is a new year. We are back on schedule. So you are going to be seeing me live every day again. I know some of y'all was like, is she coming back? Is this one of them things where she did a YouTube channel and got us all excited about a regular news source and was like, I'm out? No, that's not what happened. I just needed a break. And I'm sure you did too. It's been a lot. Let me start by saying how excited I am as a New York City voter to have Mayor Zohran Mamdani in office. Child, when I tell you, I had all these clips and I wanted to share with you guys all these amazing things that had happened at his inauguration and how excited I was. I did not go because it was cold. It was cold. I ain't even gonna hold you. I never go to these things because I'm like, people who are New Yorkers tend to not go to those things. It tends to be the other people come from out of town. There were so many non-New Yorkers there who were live streaming. I was like, oh, this is wonderful. This is lovely. But it was cold, and it's first of the year, the inauguration. But I wanted to share all these clips. I was so excited about it. He did so many amazing things. Just know that I am thrilled about where this city is heading. That man, one of the first things he did was to sign an executive order to undo all of the executive orders that our previous mayor had implemented after he had been indicted by the Department of Justice. He has revitalized an office that is designed to help tenants. He spent his inauguration night visiting tenants who live in slumlord housing, announced he's going after all the slumlords, and then, baby, he done kicked off an office of mass engagement. Be calm, my civic engagement heart. Y'all, I have been so jealous of those of you who have good mayors, and I look at folks like Mayor Brandon Johnson, who has an amazing media team. I don't actually live in Chicago, so I don't know what y'all actually think about Brandon Johnson other than what I see about him on social media. But every time I see him on social media, I be like, that mayor is mayoring. And now I finally get to say it about the mayor I voted for. Mayor Zohran Mamdani is mayoring, and I'm really excited about it. So I will keep you all up to date on that. We just ain't got time to get to the video clips today because, child, the news is newsing. Now, most of this I'm going to cover far more in depth in the podcast episode that will be out later on this afternoon. The podcast, again, is called Lurie Breaks It Down, as you could hear from the song. Please go to anywhere you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, you can find Lurie Breaks It Down there. And I'm encouraging you to share that with friends, share it with people. We want to continue this growth. We have had an explosive amount of growth. We're at over 600,000 downloads for the podcast now. So I appreciate y'all. And those of you who are watching on YouTube, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. I made a commitment to my team. I would remind myself to say that because apparently I had to say that. Now, I know y'all want me to talk about a certain abduction of a certain president of another country. I know y'all want me to talk about that. And in fact, I know a lot of y'all expect me to start there with the abduction, the whole ass kidnapping of some other country's other president, which is really weird because when you kidnap a president of another country for violating your country's laws, but then your Supreme Court has said that you, as the president of your country, cannot be violated or arrested or charged with violating any of your country's laws. I just feel like something about that ain't right, but that's not actually where we're going to start today. I know that's where a lot of y'all want me to start. That's not where we're going to start today, because what we do need to remember is this thing. Y'all may recall a couple years ago I introduced, for those of you who are listening to the show, I talked about the squirrel. And the squirrel is a device used in media that basically, and I don't know if it's officially called the squirrel, but I call it the squirrel. It's basically like there's something major happening over here, right here, but we're going to let this squirrel run out on the stage over here. So that even though you should be paying attention to what's happening over here, because the squirrel is on the stage, now everybody's paying attention to what's happening over there. I want to talk about what is not the squirrel today. Okay, so first things first, the economy is in free fall. I know it feels kind of weird to say that because the stock market's doing very well. Those of us who own stocks are like, yeah, could have done worse. It's looking up. It's looking up. You're not necessarily seeing the same sorts of doom and gloom in the news coverage the way you would if Joe Biden were in office and we were dealing with the same realities. Realities like the fact that more than 100 companies have filed WARN notices indicating that they are going to be laying off workers in January. Now, WARN notice stands for Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification. A WARN Act, this is a piece of legislation that requires employers to give 60 days notice if they're going to engage in mass layoffs. Mass layoffs are defined as when at least 50 employees are going to be laid off during a 30-day period, if a layoff situation is going to affect 1/3 of the workforce, or when 500 employees of any company are being laid off during a 30-day period. And this is according to an organization known as Legal Aid at Work. WARN notices, or should I say mass layoffs, also can happen if your work site has been closed and at least 50 people have been laid off in a 30-day period. We now have over 100 companies, over 100 American companies who have indicated to their teams that they are going to be engaging in massive layoffs, and they have just been receiving their 60-day notices. So we should expect that these layoffs to take place sometime within Black History Month or Women's History Month, because why not? It's America. And that's the first indicator that things are not going quite so well. But we also got some really weird news from Jerome Powell, who is the head of the Federal Reserve. Now, the chair, Jerome Powell, who again is a white man, even though he's got the blackest name ever. Jerome Powell, I mean, could you really? Jerome Powell has said that every time the government has been talking about all the jobs that they have increased in terms of the past several months, that they actually are probably lying out the side of their ass. Now, this is important because you may recall that the last time we got bad jobs numbers, Donald Trump fired the person who gave him the numbers. Now, the person who gave him the numbers didn't make up the numbers. She ain't pulling them out the crack of her ass. She basically just gave him the information that all the other economic indicators, which have traditionally ensured that we understood what these numbers meant, she just gave him the information and he fired her. And what we now know is that the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, has basically said that they lying. And he says that there is an overestimation in the numbers. And according to the Wall Street Journal, quote, Powell said that federal staffers believe that federal data could be overestimating job creation by up to 60,000 jobs a month. Given that figures published so far show that the economy has added about 40,000 jobs a month since April, the real number could be something more like a loss of $20,000. If only, no, not only, because that would be horrible. 20,000 jobs. 20,000 jobs a month. Not gaining 40, losing 20. I want you all to take a listen to this video clip. This is Tom Steyer, who is a candidate for the governor of California. You should know that he's a billionaire, so that we're already suspicious, because are there any good billionaires? I don't know. I haven't met any yet. I haven't met any, quite frankly, but I don't know. I don't know if there are any good billionaires, but most of the billionaires we know about did not become billionaires because they did good things for the planet. But he identifies as an environmentalist according to his bio. He's an entrepreneur. He's a billionaire, yada, yada, yada. He's also the founder and co-leader of Falaron Capital, the co-founder of One California Bank. He's a very wealthy white man. And that very wealthy white man had some things to say about Jerome Powell's commentary. And considering he is a wealthy white man who actually believes in making money, I thought it would be important that we hear what he has to say. I'm going to share my video so that you all can see this man in his own words. Oops, I didn't share the video at all. Sorry about that. I'm going to share the video so you all can see it. And let's take a listen as he describes what Jerome Powell actually said.
Today, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, said that over the past several months, 4 or 5 months, the job creation numbers reported by the United States government are wrong by 60,000 jobs per month. Now, let's be clear. The government has been reporting that we're creating approximately 40,000 jobs per month. So if they're wrong by 60,000 jobs per month, that means we're losing jobs. Okay, here's what's going on here. The numbers are fake. That's what's going on. That in fact, what the economists were predicting about how bad the tariff policy is, how bad his bill that he put through Congress is, how terrible they are, weren't showing up in the numbers. And the reason is because the numbers were wrong. This is not a rich people's issue. This is a direct blow to the middle class of America, to working families in America. That's who this is aimed at. The rich people are fine. And if you look at Trump's bill was basically a wet kiss to big companies and rich people. A wet kiss. And by the way, they're golden. This is a statement that bill and his policies are a gut punch to working families.
And indeed they are. And if you are a working family, you're not surprised by that at all. And nor are you surprised by the fact that the rest of the news is really not great. Childcare. Childcare funds getting canceled. We just saw a report or breaking news that Governor Tim Walz, is now no longer going to be pursuing his run for governor in the state of Minnesota because the whites have been whiting. Now, as noted by Threads user Danny Nextdoor, Kamala Harris did run on making preschool free for all 4-year-olds and achieving a $10 a day childcare program for millions of people. But your president just froze childcare payments to every single state. Let me back up a little bit so you understand what happened here. According to Democracy Now!, which is a white news outlet that I really, really appreciate and really like what they do, the Trump administration has, quote, frozen federal child care funding to all 50 states plus the District of Columbia and the U.S. territories. The Department of Health and Human Services says it'll only restore federal grants under the Child Care and Development Fund to states that provide more verification and administrative data about the funds they receive. Let's just pause right here and be crystal clear. The amount of information that states give to the federal government and the amount of information that is exchanged to support the child care funds is astra-freaking-nomical. They are drowning information, and considering the fact that the Trump administration has decimated these agencies, they ain't even got the staff on hand to navigate all the additional information they are now requesting, but the additional information is being requested because the whites have been whiting. Now, let's get back to the article. The nationwide freeze comes after HHS officials cut off funding to Minnesota, citing a series of fraud schemes uncovered in that state, and after Vice President J.D. Vance and other Trump administration officials amplified a deceptively edited video posted by far-right influencer Nick Shirley, white man, who recently visited Somali-owned daycare sites in Minnesota and alleged with little evidence that he'd uncovered $100 million in fraud. Now, we have not talked extensively about what's been alleged in Minnesota. It's very much like they're eating the dogs or eating the cats. And by the way, have you noticed that ain't nobody's cat or dog been eaten since the election? Ain't that weird? Not a FIFO nor a Fifi has been eaten or found missing in J.D. Vance's America. But Nick Shirley, this white boy, y'all remember James O'Keefe? I think that was his name. This white guy who would go into communities. He was really good at creating videos that were very deceptively edited. He would come in under nefarious reasons. He would record people doing things and then chop up the videos and then put it out. He was kind of like the first version, one of the earlier versions of a mass media misinformation and disinformation campaign. Nick Shirley is sort of operating in that vein. Now, James O'Keefe has gone on to, he's created an organization. They continue to do this. I don't know what they're doing right now, but I know that he has been connected to a lot of similar efforts. Now, Nick Shirley has gone around and he's basically been a part of this effort saying that the Somalis have been defrauding the child care system in Minnesota. What we actually know is that it's been the whites who have been defrauding the child care system in Minnesota. We're going to talk more about that in the days and weeks to come. Again, didn't spend a whole lot of time on this at the beginning or at the end of last year because there were so many other things competing. But now it's become an issue because ain't nobody got no child care funding. Ain't nobody got no child care funding. And by doing a similar James O'Keefean style of not journalism but misinformation hit jobs, Nick Shirley, who ain't got no evidence, basically said that all of these Somali daycares were committing fraud. He would go to the daycares. He would knock on the daycares, try to get in. And they're like, who is this strange white man trying to get into this building with all these children? He feels a little pedophilic. It's given a little dangerous to the children. So they wouldn't let him in. He basically said that these were shut down daycare centers that were fraudulently taking the money. What the local news later discovered was that this is a bunch of white people who have been doing this. The Somali daycares have been largely operational. Ain't a whole lot of issues there, but this is how misinformation has really big implications. And unfortunately, Tim Walz, apparently, according to this breaking news report, as a result of all of this, he's being accused of this, that, and the other. And they have been done investigated this. They've been done had people go to jail for this. We'll talk more about that in the days and weeks to come. The point I'm raising this is because ain't nobody got no child care funding. So let's see. What is that so far? There's over 100 companies about to do mass layoffs. Real jobs numbers are in the toilet. Child care funding has been canceled. Oh, and so have your health care subsidies. Enhanced tax credits that were used to reduce the cost of health insurance for Affordable Care Act enrollees expired over the holiday. We knew it was going to happen. We said it was going to happen. We had Dr. Rob Davidson on who talked to us about some of the bullshit-ass efforts that the Republicans were trying to pretend that they were making in order to keep or to revise the health care plan. Republicans have no health care plan. Their health care plan has been to not have Obamacare/Affordable Care Act, and that's what they got. But that means you ain't got no health care because that's how Republicans lead. And the next time you get a chance to go into office or, I'm sorry, to go into the voting booth and to vote for somebody, and people want to tell you all the parties are the same, on some issues they absolutely are, not on the ones that you actually live in, like not your health care. When it comes to child care, no. Kamala Harris wanted to expand child care and make it cheaper. The Republicans just canceled it. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, and the Democrats wanted to expand health care programs. The Republicans just canceled it. So yes, the parties are the same on many things like international affairs, which we'll get to in a minute. But on many many, many things, like the things that impact your day-to-day life, not so much, not so much. With the expanded subsidies, we had a situation, and these expanded subsidies went into place during the COVID pandemic because people were losing jobs, but people still needed access to health care. And because of the expanded subsidies, lower income enrollees were able to get health care with no premiums, and higher earners were able to pay no more than 8.5% of their income, which meant it was affordable for everybody, including the people who are in the middle class, who are often way too rich to be considered poor, but way too poor to be considered middle class. But you see what I did there? I did something right there. So healthcare subsidies have now been canceled. The Republican healthcare plan is in effect, which is to say you ain't got no healthcare. Happy Republican. And thank a Republican. We should make that a hashtag. Thank a Republican for what you don't have. You also have a situation where your student loans are now being garnished. According to the Edu Ledger, EDULEDGER, they are now reporting that the Trump administration, surprising no one who read Project 2025 or who was paying attention during the previous election, the Trump administration is now going to be garnishing wages of student loan borrowers who are in default, and that is starting this week. According to, the Edu Ledger, this development, quote, represents a significant shift in federal student loan policy. Yeah, it's a shift from the Democrats to the Republicans, because while both parties are the same on some things that don't really matter to you and some things that do, they are very different on a lot of things that matter to you. And let's get back to the article again. This development represents a significant shift in federal student loan policy and will be the first time a portion of borrowers' paycheck has been at risk since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in March of 2020, when the federal government halted all collection activity as a part of emergency relief measures. Starting the week of January the 7th, that would be this week, the Education Department expects approximately 1,000 defaulted student loan borrowers to receive notices of administrative wage garnishment, according to a U.S. Department of Education spokesperson. After that initial wave, the number of notified borrowers will continue to increase substantially in the following weeks and months. More than 5 million student loan borrowers are currently in default, and that total could swell to roughly 10 million borrowers soon, according to the Education Department. This potential doubling, pay attention, this potential doubling of defaulted borrowers reflects ongoing struggles many Americans face in managing their education debt obligations. So, yeah, now your student loans are going to be garnished. You ain't got no child care. You ain't got no health care. You ain't going to have no job. And this is a lot going on, but that's not the worst of it. There's more. Jack Smith's information. Because I know y'all want me to talk about this other thing that done happened in Venezuela when America just kidnapped this other president. But we can't get there yet, because that, my friends, is a squirrel. Jack Smith's files came out. Now, you remember Jack Smith. Jack Smith is the special prosecutor who was put into place under Merrick Garland's leadership when Merrick Garland was the Attorney General for the United States of America. Not at all our best Attorney General, by the way. Talk about that later. Not the worst, certainly not the worst, but my God, Jack Smith gets appointed by Merrick Garland, and Jack Smith is a special prosecutor. He is the one who was investigating everything that happened with January the 6th. Now, Jack Smith was brought into Congress to testify behind closed doors, and as some Democratic leaders have said, it's a really good thing that they did this behind closed doors, because quite frankly, had Jack Smith been able to testify and the American people heard what he had to say, wouldn't have been no more re-electing of Donald Trump. It wouldn't have been no, because it would have been too plain. But the reason I'm mentioning Jack Smith now is because the videos and the deposition records from those Jack Smith interviews with the Republican members of Congress, they were released over the holiday. Now, according to Midas Touch, quote, Smith testified that his investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump engaged in a criminal scheme to overturn the results of the 2020 election and obstruct the lawful transfer of power. Jack Smith also said that investigators uncovered powerful evidence that Trump willfully retained highly classified documents after leaving office, storing them at Mar-a-Lago in locations including a ballroom and a bathroom, and repeatedly obstructed efforts to retrieve them. He described January 6th as an attack on the structure of the American democracy. He noted that 140 law enforcement officers were assaulted. Over 160 later pled guilty. And in a clip, which I'm not going to have time to play because we got to get to the squirrel. In a video clip that you will be able to hear for those of you who listen to the podcast, again, called Lurie Breaks It Down, which will be out later today, you will also hear him basically say Donald Trump knew January 6th was happening. He was a part of the planning for it, and he exploited it. He benefited from it. This was all on him, dog. This was all on him. And Jack Smith is not one of them key type of people. He was like, nah, he did it, and we had to prove, and I could have proved it beyond a reasonable doubt, unless the American people decided to vote him into office, at which point, when he got voted back into office, then there wasn't a whole lot of other stuff I could do, because America has a policy of not arresting American presidents for violating American laws. Although apparently we now have a policy of arresting other countries' presidents for violating American laws. But we'll get to that in just a minute. In addition to Jack Smith, because I know you thought I was done, baby, I'm not done.
More Epstein files, because we don't talk about Jeffrey. No, until we do. And when we do, we got to talk a whole lot about it, because on Raw Story, now, we have had this sort of approach to the Jeffrey Epstein conversation. And the Jeffrey Epstein conversation up until now has been one where basically we sort of like, well, Donald Trump has not been credibly accused of anything. And in fact, that's what you'll often hear a lot of media outlets say, that, no one's accusing Donald Trump of doing anything, which has always felt weird to me, because I'm like, I feel like there's like a whole bunch of survivors who have said that Donald Trump has done terrible things. But whatever, what do I know? I'm just somebody who pays attention to the news and international sources in addition to those of this country. And so it was always weird to me that that was the framing of it. Like, and it would frame it that way to say, well, I don't know why Donald Trump is against the Epstein files coming out. He's not in them. He's not accused of anything. Baby, he's been accused of a lot. A lot. Raw Story, on Christmas Eve, they reported on a file released by the Department of Justice that showed, quote, a purported victim linking Donald Trump to the currently still unverified murder of a newborn baby. Okay. You guys recall when Donald Trump would talk about how people were having after-birth abortions and executing babies, and we were like, that's weird. That does not happen. But then we remember that every accusation is a confession. It was really weird, because when I was looking at this information about the Epstein files and the allegations that Donald Trump basically is accused of assaulting a young woman who was in her teens, and she was impregnated. She ends up having the baby. This is according to the allegations. She ends up having the baby, and that baby was murdered and disposed of in Lake Michigan. And according to the allegations, which have not been proven, but according to the allegations, Donald Trump was right there at the murdering and the discarding of the body in Lake Michigan. That's what was reported. So that came out. Then TMZ, and again, I go way more into this in the podcast episode. I think, again, it's the longest podcast episode we've ever had. That's not an interview. Then TMZ reports that Donald Trump actually assaulted her, like raped, and like that is the word that is used. And according to TMZ, President Trump's name came up in the Epstein files in a huge way. There's an FB document where someone apparently told authorities that Trump and Epstein assaulted her together. And this is all, again, covered. And they literally say, no, he raped me. Like, that's what is being said. And I say grape in the podcast because I know that sometimes when you say the actual word that they will ding you on like the YouTubes and the channels, but that's an actual quote. He raped me, direct quote, about talking about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Now, again, I know you thought that that was all that was going to happen today or that we would talk about, but I also realized that on January the 3rd, Congress was supposed to receive a report from the Department of Justice that was explaining why there had been so many redactions in that first tranche of Jeffrey Epstein files that had been released. Do you guys remember this? They had said that there were all these redactions, and then we found out that after they were releasing documents that had not been redacted, they went back in and redacted them, and then we found out that the redactions, because apparently when Doge got done, they also canceled the Adobe Acrobat account for the Department of Justice, and so they couldn't actually redact anything. They could just use black highlighter, so as soon as you copy and paste the text into another document, you basically could remove the black highlighter and read all the shit. Remember all that? Well, on January the 3rd, according to legislation that was passed to require the release of these files, Congress was supposed to receive from the Department of Justice a report as to why those redactions had been made. And yet, something else happened on January the 3rd. So weird. Well, with all of this, with the fact that you've got over 100 companies that are now going to be laying people off, the jobs numbers have been getting lied about, you ain't got no more child care funds from the government, you ain't got no more health care funds from the government, Jeffrey Epstein files is out where Donald Trump is clearly incredibly being accused of doing a whole lot of things. It's the perfect time to start a war. It's time to go to war. That's what Americans do, especially when we have a Republican president. And so that's what actually ended up happening on January the 3rd. The Department of Justice did not issue that report to the Congress about why they had engaged in all of these redactions. But what did happen was y'all's president went into another country, kidnapped that president, because they say that that president had been indicted for violating American laws. American laws, and an indictment which does not include anything about narco trafficking, an indictment that did not also include anything about like all the stuff that they had said, you know, the narco trafficking and the fentanyl. That's not in the indictment. What's in the indictment is that he is accused of owning machine guns. He's accused of owning weapons that most Americans have in their backyards, especially if they're a good blood red white American. And so they kidnapped the president of Venezuela after bombing Venezuela, and brought him and his wife to New York. He here right now in Brooklyn, from what I understand, in the Metropolitan Detention Center, which is a bad place to be. And they're charging him with violating American laws. But we cannot arrest the American president and charge the American president with violating laws. I'm wondering is like what's going to happen here, because they actually have to prove in court now that they have arrested this man, kidnapped him, and brought him. They have to prove in court that he did the criminal things that they say that he did. And I'm like, at what point is his attorney going to be like, well, the Supreme Court of this country basically said a president has immunity, so why would not that extend to all the presidents? Like, there are so many ways that this is going to get so much fucking worse. But what I also want to remind you all is, do you remember during the campaign, 2024, when y'all's then running for president, but now president, when he basically told the oil companies that if they gave him $1 billion for his campaign, he would do right by them. And they gave him a hell of a lot of money. Yeah. Representative Goldman was on CNN talking about this, and you'll hear that clip in the podcast. I don't have time to get to it right now, but it makes a lot of sense when you remember that Donald Trump told the oil companies, get me into office, I'll give you a big gift. It makes a lot of sense because what we also learned is that in a press pool report, Donald Trump told the reporters in this press gaggle on Air Force One that he actually spoke to the oil companies before he went in and kidnapped the president of Venezuela. He said he spoke to them before, during, and after. Oh, I'm sorry, before and after. And the fact that he told oil companies what he was finna do, and he ain't told Congress what he was finna do, I just think this is really, really interesting. And now America says they are going to run Venezuela. And as you can hear in the podcast episode, in a conversation between George Stephanopoulos and Marco Rubio is like, yeah, we want a better future for the people of Venezuela. We gonna run Venezuela. And George Stephanopoulos is like, under what authority? And he's like, well, we gonna run Venezuela because we got court orders. Court orders say we can go and seize their boats. So I'm like, oh, now y'all want to listen to the courts? And now American courts have the ability to give you permission to do things in foreign countries. But when those American courts told you to go into those foreign countries and bring back the people you had wrongfully sent to those foreign countries, then you didn't have to listen to the American courts. Do you realize how fucking fugazi all of this is? Happy New Year! Happy New Year! And so what I want to do right now, I want to turn you all, we're not going to get a chance to play this entire video clip, but I want you all to there's a clip. I'm actually going to, Amina, let's put this I'm going to put it in the Zoom chat. Jonah, if you could please tweet this out, and Amina, or somebody put this in the chat for the people on YouTube. If you could do that. This is a TikTok video from Unlearn 16. It's about 8 minutes and 10 seconds long. It is exquisite. We play a number of these clips in the podcast to explain to you what's basically happening in Venezuela. And some of the things that we need to understand is really reduced to this notion called petrodollars. Okay, I'm going to play this clip for you. This is the petrodollar clip. This is a petrodollars refers to an agreement that the American, Henry Kissinger made with Saudi Arabia back in 1974. I wasn't even on the planet yet. Back in 1974. I want you all to take a listen to this clip. This is a clip that basically explains how it is that we might have a better understanding as to what's happening right now. I'm going to share my screen with y'all because this is important. And this is a matter of international regulation and regulatory engagement that most Americans don't pay not a freaking lick of attention to. But petrodollars really, really matter. Let's take a listen.
The petrodollar is actually a device invented by Kissinger and Nixon.
U.S. President Richard Nixon sent his Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger to Saudi Arabia for a secret meeting.
That meeting took place on a battleship called the USS Quincy, and very few records were kept of that meeting. But Roosevelt promised the King of Saudi Arabia weapons and protection in exchange for the United States to have the exclusive right to develop oil from Saudi Arabia using dollars. Meaning, if countries wanted to trade the most important commodity of all, oil, they needed to get their hands on dollars. And from that point on, oil would be priced in USD. And if a country tried to get their hands on oil without using dollars, that country historically needed more freedom in their lives.
You know, it's so interesting when you consider how important history is, right? and when you have countries like BRICS who have decided that they're going to trade oil in different denominations. That creates a bit of a problem. Venezuela has been petitioning to be a part of BRICS. And actually, I want you all to take a listen. This is the last part of this video clip from Unlearn 16. And you're not going to get a chance to see it because I don't have the ability to fast forward into the clip that it's currently playing. But I want you all to take a listen to this clip. This is Unlearn 16. Amina, this is the final clip starting at 6:35. I want you to take a listen to this where she basically is going to explain how petrodollars and what's happening in Venezuela really matter right now.
Let's take a listen.
This last one's going to blow you away. Number 3. Is it about oil? Absolutely. They want control of the world's biggest oil supply, but that's not the full answer. What the real answer is U.S. currency rates. Follow along, this gets tricky. Oil has always been traded in U.S. dollars, called petrol. And what that has served the United States in doing is solidifying, is stabilizing, is increasing U.S. dollars. Because if anybody wants to buy oil anywhere in the world, they have to use U.S. currency. It artificially inflates the price of the U.S. dollar and stabilizes the U.S. economy. This is the real problem. Because what Trump and the United States is really afraid of are BRICS nations. What are they? They are nations, they are countries that have gotten together and are starting to trade without the United States, especially oil, and not use the U.S. currency as their trading denomination. And that is going to possibly submarine the U.S. economy. So is it about oil? Sure, but what really it's about is about the United States being able to control the entire market of trade when it comes to oil, thus inflating and propping up the U.S. economy. So when somebody says, is it about the oil? Say, sure, but that's just a vehicle for them to control everything else.
You see how that works? You see how that works? You should know that recently there has been a lot of concern because there have been an increasing number of countries, that was Freudian, an increasing number of countries that have committed to trading for oil in non-dollar denominations, like the yuan. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. It's the Chinese monetary denomination. And when you decide to use non-dollars to trade for oil, a system that has basically propped up the American economy since the 1970s, you're going to need a little freedom. You're going to need a little, Americans going to bring you a little bit of freedom. And this is really important because we saw how this happened with Gaddafi in Libya, right? He wanted to use an African denomination to trade in resources. We have seen, not just in Gaddafi, we have seen how this has been an issue for just about every country that America has invaded recently. It's always something about oil. In 2000, Saddam Hussein had announced that Iraq, I believe it was going to be selling oil in euros and not dollars. We saw how that happened. You know, what happened there. They get invaded a couple years later, weapons of mass destruction that nobody ever found. Again, 2009, Muammar Gaddafi, he proposed to use a gold-backed African currency. He wanted to be, I think it was called the gold dinar, maybe? That might be wrong about that, for oil trade. And when you look at some of the emails that were leaked as a part of Hillary Clinton's campaign and others, you find out that they were very concerned that Muammar Gaddafi, who was a very attractive leader at the time in terms of the charisma and what he was trying to do, was talking about trading oil in another country. And we saw how that happened. NATO bombed Gaddafi, bombs Libya, and now you got open slave markets operating all throughout Libya. So, listen, Venezuela got, 3, 4, 5 times the amount of oil that Gaddafi was able to access and Saddam was able to access. And they have been petitioning Venezuela to join BRICS. They have been partnering. That would allow them to partner more formally with China, Russia, and Iran. Those are 3 countries that are really not feeling the American dollar being in charge of the global economy. So, yeah, this is where we're at. Happy New Year. 866-801-8255. 866-801-TALK is the number. So as you can see, there was a lot to get to. And that's one of the reasons why I did not have the ability to start with Venezuela, because there's so many other things, because Venezuela is also the squirrel. Now, here's the thing that you need to recall, that Donald Trump has also said that there are 6 other countries that he plans to handle. He got Greenland. He got a whole bunch of countries. Do we have time for that clip, Amina? I want y'all to take a listen to this clip. This is Aaron Parnas, who's talking about the other countries that Donald Trump now wants to take over, because now he's excited, right? Now, ain't nobody talking about Jeffrey. No, no, no. And now we can talk about all these other things. And Donald Trump is excited. The oil companies are excited. Everybody's excited. It's great. USA. USA. I guess the Venezuelans are now our countrymen. I don't know. Is that how that's happening? I want y'all to take a listen to this clip. This is Aaron Parnas. Let's take a listen.
We have some news right now. Donald Trump just finished a press gaggle on Air Force One, and in less than an hour, he threatened military intervention of some sort, or United States intervention, in 6 separate countries. First, he threatened Venezuela with a potential second strike if things don't go his way. He was also asked what his thoughts were about the vice president of Venezuela, current acting president, saying that Maduro was kidnapped. Trump said kidnapping isn't such a bad term. Then he moved on to Cuba, threatening possible American intervention, but saying that we may not have to do it because the Cuban regime might fall on its own. Then he went on to Mexico, saying that something has to be done with Mexico. Mexico has to get their act together. Then he went on to Colombia, saying that he would not be opposed to a strike on Colombia like we saw on Venezuela to remove the current Colombian president. Then he went on to Iran, saying that the United States will intervene militarily if Iran continues to kill protesters. And finally, he threatened about Greenland again, though said we're going to hold off on that for about 20 days, but that the United States needs Greenland and that the European Union knows the United States needs Greenland.
So, America, I guess the part that I'm struggling with is how they expect this to end. Right? Like, that's the thing. Like the bully never expects to be pushed back on, right? Like, that's the thing. But the rest of the world, y'all just need to realize that this is American bullying 101. This is American colonial whiteness policy, but this is just bully. We see this on playgrounds in America all the time. And y'all might not see this because y'all probably have more collective cultures than we do, but we have a very individualistic culture, which means bullying is something that Americans are really, really good at. And one thing we know about bullying culture is that the bully gonna run the yard. Don't matter what adults are there. Don't matter what other people in power are. The bully gonna run the yard until the people who are being bullied stop the bully. That's it. That's the only thing that's going to stop the bully. Because even if you go tell your parents going to have a meeting. They're going to have a meeting with the school. They're going to come to the school. They're going to maybe bring in the bully's parents if the bully has parents. Often they're coming from challenged homes. Maybe not. But basically, the only thing that's going to stop that bully is when the people getting bullied handle it. However, you got to handle it on a schoolyard. Now, I'm bordering on, having Secret Service approach my conversation. So I'm not going to say much more than that. I'm just saying the rest of the world, y'all going to have to figure it out. Oh, and for all of you countries who are now saying that Americans cannot come to your countries anymore, I get it. I fully understand it. I'm just also asking that if you could please give those of us who are Black, like a safe route, like a safe harbor, an additional option, because it ain't our fault. We ain't asked to be here. We don't want none of this shit. And we just sort of stuck here because we ain't trying to colonize y'all's countries either. So give us, do us a solid, give us a